Imagine a woman who left the dusty streets of the Mauritanian village of Wali Diantong, located on the border of Senegal and Mauritania, where the only sounds were the cries of market traders and the rustle of wind driving sand along scorching roads. Imagine a man who fled the poverty of Mali, a country where droughts destroyed harvests and the chance to find work seemed a luxury available only to the chosen few. Imagine how these two people, each with their own story of pain and hope, met in cold and foreign France in the 90s, where African immigrants were invisible to society, people who were tolerated but not accepted. No one could have imagined then that their firstborn, born on the 15th of May, 1997, in the small industrial town of Vernon in northern France, would one day become the owner of the Ballon d'Or, the highest award in world football. Monsieur Ousmane Dembélé is a story of how two continents, two cultures, and two dreams merged into one to create a footballer who would prove to the whole world. Origin does not define destiny if a fire burns in your heart, and there are those beside you who believe in you even when the whole world turns away. The story of the Dembélé family is a portrait of the desperate struggle for survival that millions of African families waged at the end of the 20th century. Ousmane Sr., the father of the future star, was born in Mali, one of the poorest countries in West Africa, where the average per capita income barely reached a few dollars a day. Mali is a country of contrasts. Ancient mud mosques of Timbuktu coexist with slums where children walk barefoot on muddy streets, and the only hope for a better life remains emigration. Ousmane Sr. understood this from a young age, when he saw his own parents toiling in the fields, trying to grow something on the depleted land. He dreamed of Europe, of that distant, almost mythical land where, as his fellow villagers said, one could earn in a month what one could not earn in Mali in a year. In the early 90s, when France was still opening its doors to people from its former African colonies, Ousmane Sr. gathered his last savings, said goodbye to his family, and set off on a journey that would forever change his life. Fatimata, Ousmane Jr.'s mother, walked a similar path. She was born in the Mauritanian Senegalese village of Wali Diantong, a tiny settlement lost between Senegal and Mauritania, where life flowed as slowly as it had centuries ago. Here, women worked in the fields from dawn till dusk, carried water from wells, cooked food over an open fire, and their only hope was to marry a man who could provide the family with at least a minimal income. But Fatimata dreamed of more. She heard stories of relatives who went to Europe and sent money home, helping those who remained to survive. When she had the opportunity to leave the village and go to France, she did not hesitate for a second. The journey was long, dangerous, and full of humiliations. Illegal transporters, fake documents, the fear of being caught at the border. But Fatimata made it to France, and it was here, in a foreign country where she didn't know the language and had no friends, that she met Ousmane Sr. Both were refugees from poverty, both sought a better fortune, both spoke the same language, the language of survival. Their meeting in the mid-90s was not a romantic story from a movie, but a union of two people united by common pain and hope. France met them coldly. African immigrants in those years faced discrimination at every step. They were denied jobs, refused housing, looked at with suspicion and disdain. Ousmane Sr. scraped by with odd jobs, as a loader, a cleaner, a laborer on construction sites where he was paid pennies and no documents were asked for. Fatimata got a job as a cleaner in one of the hospitals, working 12 hours a day, returning home with swollen feet and hands smelling of chlorine. They rented a tiny apartment in Vernon, a small industrial town in the Evreux department, Normandy region, in northern France, 100 kilometers from Paris. Vernon is a typical French provincial town with a population of about 25,000 people, where life flowed calmly and measuredly, where locals worked in small businesses and went to Mass on Sundays. For African immigrants, it was a world in which they always remained strangers. On the 15th of May, 1997, when spring had fully arrived and the streets of Vernon were drowned in green, Ousmane Sr. and Fatimata's first child was born. The boy was named Monsieur Ousmane Dembélé, a full name that combined the traditions of both parents. Ousmane is a name that in Islamic tradition means little man, but is also a tribute to his father, a continuation of the lineage. For Fatimata, the birth of her son was an event of great importance. In African culture, the firstborn boy is not just a child. He is the continuer of the lineage, the support of the family, the one on whom the greatest hopes are placed. Ousmane Jr. was born a healthy, loudly crying infant, and when his mother first held him to her breast, she vowed to herself that she would do everything possible to ensure her son had a better life than hers. However, soon after Ousmane's birth, the family moved to the neighboring city of Évreux, a larger settlement with a population of about 50,000 people, also located in Normandy, just 30 kilometers from Vernon. The reasons for the move were prosaic. There were more opportunities for earning in Évreux, a larger African diaspora that could provide support in difficult times. Here, in one of the working-class neighborhoods of Évreux, in an apartment building where the stairwells smelled of spices and speech in a dozen different languages could be heard, young Ousmane spent his first years. The apartment was tiny, 2 rooms for a family that would soon grow. After Ousmane, Fatimata gave birth to 3 more children, a brother and 2 sisters. 4 children in a 2-room apartment where the father was almost never home, constantly working, and the mother was torn between cleaning at the hospital and caring for the little ones. Toys were few, clothes passed down from older to younger, and the only entertainment for the children were the courtyards, asphalted areas between houses where boys from all over the neighborhood chased a battered football. But it was in Évreux, on these dusty pitches, where rusty gates served as goals and the asphalt was riddled with cracks, that little Ousmane first truly fell in love with football. He was only 4 or 5 years old when he first saw older boys playing with a ball. Ousmane didn't remember the moment when football became a part of his life. It seemed it had always been there, like the air he breathed. His mother recalled how her little son, barely learning to walk, was already running after the ball, falling, getting up, running again, and no scrapes or bruises could stop him. Fatimata saw something more in it than just a children's game. She saw a fire in her son's eyes, the same determination with which she herself had once left Mauritania, in search of a better life. The relationship between Ousmane Sr. and Fatimata began to fray when young Ousmane was about 6 years old. Constant lack of money, fatigue from endless work, cultural differences that seemed insignificant at the beginning of their relationship, but became more noticeable over time. All this led to the parents separating. Divorce for an African family is always a tragedy, but Fatimata made a firm decision. She stayed with the children, taking full responsibility for their upbringing. Ousmane Sr. did not completely disappear from his son's life. He maintained contact, sometimes visited the children, and helped financially when he could. But the main figure in young Ousmane's life became his mother, a strong-willed woman who worked day and night to feed her 4 children and yet found the strength to believe in their future. It was at this moment, when Fatimata was left alone with 4 children, that a person appeared in the Dembélé family's life who would forever change young Ousmane's fate. This person was Sambagou Dembélé, his paternal uncle, a former footballer and aspiring agent who himself had once tried to break into professional sports but could not overcome the barriers facing an African immigrant in French football. Sambagou understood the pain of shattered hopes better than anyone else, and when he first saw his nephew kicking a ball in the courtyards of Évreux, he recognized in the boy the same flame that had once burned in himself. But this time, everything had to be different. Sambagou vowed that he would not let Ousmane's talent go to waste like his own. For 6-year-old Ousmane, football was not just a game. It was a way to forget about the cramped apartment, about his mother coming home late at night with eyes red from fatigue, about his classmates at school sometimes teasing him for his skin color and strange accent. When he took the ball, or rather, placed it at his feet, the whole world disappeared. There was only him, the ball, and the space that needed to be overcome. Ousmane didn't remember who taught him the first techniques, who showed him how to kick the ball properly, how to dribble past an opponent. It seemed this knowledge came to him naturally, like the ability to breathe. The older boys he played with in the courtyard first laughed at the tiny kid who barely reached their waist, but very quickly the laughter turned into respect. Ousmane was faster than everyone, more technical than everyone. He saw the field in a way no one else did. In 2004, when Ousmane turned 7, Sambagou convinced Fatimata to enroll the boy in organized football. It was not an easy decision for a single mother who was barely making ends meet. Football sections required money for uniforms, for fees, for trips to matches. all things the family didn't have. But Fatimata saw how her son's eyes lit up when he talked about football, and she couldn't refuse him. Ousmane was enrolled in the youth academy of the local club Madeleine Évreux, ALM Évreux, a modest amateur team where children from families as poor as the Dembélés played. Training sessions were held 3 times a week at the municipal stadium with worn artificial turf, where the paint on the markings had long peeled off, and the goals were covered in rust. But for 7-year-old Ousmane, it was a sacred temple, a place where he could be himself. Ousmane's first coach immediately noticed that the boy was unlike the others. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the tallest, but his speed of thought outpaced the speed of his legs, and that was already an incredible speed. Ousmane received the ball and instantly saw all options for developing an attack: which partners were free, where the opponent's defenders were, which route would lead to the goal fastest. And he also had dribbling, a fantastic, almost magical ability to carry the ball as if it were glued to his boots. Opponents tried to take the ball away, but Ousmane escaped them with light feints, sharp changes of direction, deceptive body movements that caused defenders to lose their balance and fall to the turf. "This boy is special," the coach told Fatimata after one of the training sessions. "I've seen many talented children, but I've never met anyone like your son." When Ousmane turned 11, an event occurred that elevated his game to a whole new level. Uncle Sambagou suggested his nephew try futsal, mini football, which was rapidly gaining popularity in France in those years. Futsal differed from regular football not only in field size and number of players, but also in the pace of the game. Everything happened many times faster here. The ball flew at incredible speed. Space was limited. Every touch had to be as precise as possible because there was no time to think at all. From 2008 to 2010, between the ages of 11 and 13, Ousmane actively played futsal in parallel with regular football. These were 2 years that fundamentally changed his playing style. Futsal taught him to think several seconds faster than his opponent, developed his technique to a level unattainable for most peers, and honed his dribbling to perfection. At the age of 12, Ousmane transferred to the academy of another local club, Évreux FC 27, which was slightly more prestigious and had better infrastructure. Here, he was already playing with boys who seriously dreamed of a professional career, and the competition was fierce. But Ousmane didn't just withstand this competition, he dominated. Match after match, he scored goals, made assists, dribbled past defenders as if they were mannequins in training. The coaches of Évreux FC 27 understood that they held a diamond that only needed polishing. They worked with Ousmane individually, teaching him not only to attack, but also to think about team play, tactics, and how to use his strengths most effectively. But behind all this was Fatimata, a woman who transformed from a simple cleaner into her son's career manager, despite having no education or connections in the football world. She studied contracts, called clubs, arranged tryouts, and defended Ousmane's interests with a ferocity that surprised even experienced agents. Fatimata understood that football was the only chance to lift the entire family out of poverty, and she wasn't going to miss that chance. She accompanied her son to every training session, every match, sitting in the stands in all weather, rain, snow, summer heat. The other children in the family, a brother and 2 sisters, stayed home alone or with neighbors while Fatimata drove Ousmane to stadiums. This was unfair to them, and his mother understood that, but she also understood that sacrifices were necessary if one wanted to change fate. When rumors of the incredible talent from Évreux began to spread throughout footballing France, scouts from big clubs started coming to watch Ousmane. Caen and Le Havre, 2 respectable clubs with good youth academies, were the first to show interest. But Fatimata had one categorical demand. The club that took her son had to provide housing for the entire family. She was not going to part with Ousmane, sending him to live in an academy dormitory as other parents did. The family had to stay together. Caen and Le Havre refused. This demand seemed too burdensome to them. But there was another club that was closely watching Ousmane's development. Rennes, a team from Brittany known for its youth academy and willingness to invest in talent. And it was Rennes that agreed to Fatimata's terms. In 2010, when Ousmane was 13 years old, the Dembélé family gathered their modest belongings and moved from Évreux to Rennes. a city in Brittany, 200 kilometers west of Paris. It was a new world, a new chapter in life, a new hope. Ousmane received an invitation to one of France's best youth academies, and his family received a roof over their heads and the opportunity to stay together. Fatimata held the contract and cried, not from sorrow, but from relief. Her sacrifices had not been in vain. Her faith in her son was beginning to bear fruit. A long road lay ahead, full of trials, triumphs, and disappointments, but the first, most important step had been taken. The boy from an immigrant family who grew up in the poor neighborhoods of Évreux received a chance that thousands of young footballers across France dream of. When the Dembélé family finally settled in Rennes, Fatimata realized she had made the right choice. The city of Rennes, the capital of Brittany, located 200 kilometers west of Paris, was a completely different world compared to the poor neighborhoods of Évreux. Here, there was more order, more opportunities, more hope. The Rennes Academy was located in a modern training complex on the outskirts of the city, where fountains splashed, manicured lawns were green, and stadiums shone with quality pitches. For 13-year-old Ousmane, it was like going from hell to heaven. Here he could develop. Here he was surrounded by world-class coaches. Here the atmosphere was imbued with the belief that one of these boys could become a star. Youth team head coach Yannick Menu noticed Ousmane on his very first day at the stadium. "This boy moves differently from the others," he later recounted in an interview. Menu had seen hundreds of gifted children during his years of work, but something about Dembélé was special. Not just technique, not just speed, but a rare feel for the game, an intuition that cannot be taught. Ousmane moved across the field as if he knew what would happen in the next 3 seconds. He saw space that other boys only saw after he'd already exploited that advantage. In 4 years of working with Menu, from 2010 to 2014, Dembélé passed through all age categories of the youth academy. Under 13, under 15, under 17, each time outpacing his peers not by 1, but by 2 or 3 years of development. During his time at the academy, Ousmane developed not only his football skills but also his character. The Rennes Academy had boys from various social strata. Children of wealthy bourgeois from Parisian suburbs coexisted with children of workers like Dembélé. Competition arose, sometimes even hostility, but Fatimata taught her son to ignore social differences. "The ball does not see skin color," she would say. "The ball only sees who is faster, who is smarter, who wants it more." Ousmane learned this lesson well. He didn't seek friendship, he sought competition. Every day in training, he proved that he was better, that he was faster, that his dreams were grander than anyone else's. Fatimata's unusual decision to put Ousmane in futsal when he was 11 or 12 years old continued to bear fruit. Mini football developed his technique to a master level, in a confined space where there's no room for inaccuracies, no time for contemplation. Every touch had to be perfect. Fatimata remembered how Uncle Sambagou told her that futsal was a cradle for promising wingers. And he was right. By the time Ousmane transitioned to under 17 in 2014, his dribbling would be so perfect that defenders would seem like mannequins in training. In the 2014 to 2015 season, a turning point occurred that changed Ousmane's perception at the club. At 17 years old, he was promoted to Rennes' reserve team, a team in the French 4th division where older, more experienced players played. It was a serious test. The reserve team is not a youth team. Here, guys who have already gone through the University of Football, who have serious experience, physical power, and ruthlessness, play. In 18 matches that season, young Dembélé scored 13 goals, including a hat-trick against Évreux in a big 6-1 victory. In 18 matches, 13 goals. This means he scored a goal in almost every other match. He was recognized as the club's best young player, and sports journalists began to debate whether he was already ready for the first team or if he still needed time to develop. After that season, in the autumn of 2015, Ousmane's first professional contract awaited him with readiness. The 18-year-old boy, who grew up in the poverty of Évreux, was earning a living playing his favorite game. Fatimata signed the contract, and tears reappeared in her eyes, no longer from pain, but from pride. Her son had gone from a street kid to a professional footballer, and ahead lay a league where world-class stars played. Here is the moment that would change everything. On the 1st of October, 2015, exactly 4 years after joining Rennes, when Ousmane finally turned 17, he signed his first professional contract. Fatimata cried, holding the documents. Her son officially became a professional footballer. Her sacrifices were beginning to pay off. But a contract is just paper. The fact was that head coach Philippe Montagnier was in no hurry to give the young man a chance. Month after month, Dembélé remained out of the squad, sat on the bench, watching experienced players take the field. Fury boiled inside him. The young, hungry, ambitious boy didn't understand why he was being kept on the sidelines. He was ready to play at the highest level. He felt it every day in training. Under pressure from the management and after intense negotiations where Fatimata defended her son's rights, Montagnier finally agreed to give him a chance. On the 6th of November, 2015, a debut occurred that went down in club history. Ousmane Dembélé came on as a substitute in a match against Angers and immediately made his mark. His speed, his dribbling, his unpredictability completely baffled the defenders. It was just a small match in the first round, but newspapers were already writing about the young talent who had appeared at Rennes. On the 22nd of November, he started for the first time against Bordeaux and scored. In his first game as a starter, he had a goal and another assist in the same game. This could not be a coincidence. Then the madness began. From November to May 2016, Dembélé transformed into one of the most exciting young stars in French football. Every match was like a show. His dribbling, his speed, his ability to finish attacks. All of this together created the image of a footballer who seemed otherworldly. On the 6th of March, 2016, a moment occurred that attracted the attention of all European football. In a match against Nantes, 18-year-old Ousmane scored a hat-trick, 3 goals in one game. But most importantly, on that day, scouts from Barcelona, Liverpool, and Chelsea unexpectedly appeared in the stands. No one knew in advance about their presence, but they came, saw, and were conquered. The 2015-2016 season for Dembélé ended with phenomenal statistics. 12 goals and 6 assists in Ligue One, all at an age when most talents were still fighting for a place in youth squads. He began to be compared to a young Cristiano Ronaldo from his Manchester United days, to Eden Hazard, to other great wingers who thrilled Europe with their speed and technique. The French press wrote not about a problematic boy who once wanted to go to Benfica, but about a star who had risen above the horizon of Ligue One. Interest from European giants grew day by day. Messages from players of Real Madrid, Man City, and other top clubs appeared in his social media contact list, but the first to actually offer concrete money was German Borussia Dortmund. On the 12th of May, 2016, Ousmane Dembélé's transfer to Borussia was announced. The sum, 15 million euros, a 5-year contract, the right to play in the Champions League, the opportunity to develop on one of Europe's best youth platforms. For Rennes, this was a huge sum that allowed the club to invest in the development of its academy. For Dembélé, it was a continuation of his ascent. From French Ligue One to the German Bundesliga, to a team known for its willingness to invest in young talents. Fatimata blessed her son. She knew he was ready for this step. The 19-year-old boy who grew up in the poverty of Évreux would now be known throughout Europe. The summer of 2017 in Ousmane. Dembélé's life began with the most dramatic event of his career. After just one season in Dortmund, where he scored 12 goals and provided 22 assists in 49 matches, he was invited by Barcelona, the very team that had recently parted ways with Neymar. The text incorrectly says Nice Tottenham. On the 6th of August, 2017, the official website of the Catalan club announced the transfer of the French winger. The transfer fee shocked the entire football world. 105 million euros as a base fee, plus 42 million euros in bonuses, totaling up to 147 million euros. This was the second most expensive transfer in Barcelona's history after Neymar, and the fourth in the history of football overall. Dembélé was given the number 11 jersey at his new club, the number worn by great attacking wingers of Catalan legends. Ousmane arrived in Barcelona at the age of 20 with immense pressure on his shoulders. His appointment was clear. He was to replace the departing superstar, to fill the void left by Neymar, to become another link in the chain of championships that Barcelona won year after year. The club invested fantastic sums of money in him, and there was no chance to squander it, as many young talents had done. But fate had a completely different scenario in store for Dembélé. On the 9th of September 2017, Ousmane debuted for his new club in a match against Espanyol, coming on as a substitute. His statistics were unremarkable but promising. Then, the misfortunes began. On the 16th of September 2017, Dembélé suffered an injury, a hamstring tear. Doctors predicted 4 months of recovery. This was the first injury that would begin a chain of nightmares that would haunt him throughout his 6 years in Barcelona. Over the next 5 years and 10 months, Ousmane would suffer 14 muscle injuries of varying severity. 784 days. That is the exact number of days he would spend recovering from injuries. More than 2 years of his life were lost on hospital beds instead of football pitches. But muscle injuries were only half the problem. The second half of the problem was called discipline. In the initial period of his stay at Barcelona, young Dembélé faced problems that seemed insignificant to him, but were insurmountable obstacles for a super club. He was late for training, sometimes simply didn't show up. His diet was chaotic. Instead of sports nutrition, he ate fast food, pizza, all that is strictly forbidden for a professional footballer. But most importantly, video games. Ousmane was obsessed with video games. He spent nights in front of the monitor playing FIFA and other online games until 2, 3, sometimes 4 in the morning. Then he would wake up broken, tired, unable to train properly. Barcelona tried to help. The club hired a personal chef for him, who prepared every meal in accordance with sports recommendations. The club sent a psychologist who was supposed to help the young player understand life's priorities. The club assigned a personal physiotherapist who worked with him daily. But Ousmane seemed alien to this world of super professionalism. He was young, he was 20 years old, he had just earned more money than his parents could earn in their entire lives, and he just wanted to live like a young man, not like a robot on a football field. Dembélé himself later admitted in an interview that he simply didn't understand what it meant to be a professional at Barcelona's level, that the media exaggerated his problems, but at the same time, yes, the problems were real. His statistics for his first 4 seasons in Barcelona were modest and disappointing. For the 2017 to 2018 season, 25 matches, 5 goals. For 2018-2019, 21 matches, 1 goal. For 2019-2020, 30 matches, 6 goals. For a player costing 147 million euros, this was a disaster. People said that Barcelona had thrown money down the drain, that Dembélé was a failed purchase, that he should have been sold immediately. Amidst all this criticism, Fatimata worried about her son. Uncle Sambagou called him and reminded him of his roots, of the poor apartment in Évreux, of the chance he had, which is given to 1 in a million. But in the last 2 seasons at Barcelona, a miracle happened. Ousmane finally understood that he could no longer live the way he had been living. The new head coach Xavi, appointed in 2021, believed in him and said words that subsequently helped Dembélé revive. Used correctly, Dembélé can be the best player in the world. President Joan Laporta in 2021 praised him, stating that Dembélé was better than Kylian Mbappé. Finally, Ousmane heard the words his soul needed, and he responded to them with his play. In the 2022-2023 season, he played 29 matches, scored 8 goals, and provided 5 assists, results for which he had been brought to the club 6 years earlier. Throughout his career at Barcelona, Ousmane played 204 matches, scored 49 goals, and provided 40 assists. He won 3 La Liga championships, 2 Copa del Rey titles, and 2 Spanish Super Cups. His story in Catalonia is a story of how youth, inexperience, and a lack of discipline can almost destroy a career, but how faith, support, and most importantly, the player's own decision to change can pull a person out of the deepest abyss. But a more important story lay ahead. It is said that every man needs a moment when he realizes that life is not just a pursuit of fame and money, that there is something more important, something worth changing oneself for. For Ousmane Dembélé, such a moment was meeting a woman whose name he kept secret for a long time. Rima Edbouche, of Moroccan-Italian origin, owner of a small fashion brand Razalai, a Muslim influencer with 300,000 followers on social networks, appeared in his life when he was at the darkest point of his career at Barcelona. Their acquaintance ironically happened during his loan spell at Rennes in 2020-2021, when he returned to his hometown for several months, seeking to regain confidence and form. Rima and Ousmane met, and it was a love that more closely resembled the meeting of two fragments of a whole. On the 24th of December, 2021, an event occurred that Ousmane kept completely secret from the world, a traditional Moroccan wedding ceremony in Morocco. By this point, they had been together for 2 years, but the world did not know of Rima's existence. The wedding was simple, familial, without bustling media and photographers, surrounded by the closest people. Even his Barcelona teammates didn't know that their teammate was already married. This was a new Ousmane, a man who stopped seeking approval in the eyes of journalists and fans and began to seek meaning in the eyes of his wife. But the real turning point came on the 16th of September, 2022, when a daughter entered their lives. In Barcelona, in the city that for a long time seemed alien and hostile to Ousmane, a girl was born, a little Catalan, half French, half Moroccan, a symbol of new life, new priorities. When Ousmane first held his daughter in his arms, when he looked into her tiny eyes, he realized that football was not his whole life, that there are things more important than scored goals and won trophies. Fatherhood struck him like an electric shock, awakening him from a years-long nightmare of injuries and disappointments. From that moment, Ousmane began to change. Rima became his anchor, his safe harbor in the storms of his career. She came to every match, sat in the stands with their daughter, and her presence gave him strength. But most of all, practical support helped. Rima took over the management of all aspects of his daily life. A team of specialists was hired. A personal nutritionist who prepared every meal in accordance with new scientific principles of athlete nutrition. A physiotherapist who came daily to work with his muscles and ligaments. A psychologist who helped him deal with childhood traumas and adult fears. Cooperation with a French nutritionist who developed a special diet that excluded everything harmful to his body proved especially effective. Dembélé's lifestyle underwent revolutionary changes. Video games, the main enemy of his form, were erased from his life. Fast food and pizza, which he used to eat at night, were now replaced by organic food prepared by his personal chef. He stopped being late for training. He started sleeping 8 hours a day, a full, healthy sleep necessary for body recovery. Every day was planned with minute precision, training at the club, then individual work with the physiotherapist, then time with the family, then early bedtime. The results of this transformation began to manifest already in the 2022-2023 season. Dembélé played 29 matches, scored 8 goals, and provided 5 assists, numbers that finally began to approach those for which he was brought to Barcelona 7 years ago. Injuries became fewer, discipline increased. Xavi, the head coach, saw the changes and began to trust him more. But most importantly, Ousmane himself changed as a person. He became more mature, more responsible, understanding that a second chance in football rarely comes, and when it does, one must hold on to it with both hands. A new chapter of his life awaited. A return to France, where he hoped to write a completely different story. When Rima told her husband about the call from PSG, Ousmane was silent for a long time. Returning to France, to his homeland, to the country he had never forgotten despite years spent in Spain and Germany, seemed impossible. But with each passing day, the idea became more appealing. Fatimata, his mother, now over 55 years old, supported the decision from the beginning. "Come home, son," she said. "You've traveled the world, and now it's time to show the French who you've become." On the 12th of August 2023, the news that had long been hidden from the media was officially announced. Ousmane Dembélé was joining Paris Saint-Germain. The The transfer fee was 50 million euros, half immediately received by Barcelona, the other half later. The contract was for 5 years, number 23 on the chest of the young winger. But most importantly, he was coming home. When Ousmane first walked through the Parc des Princes, the historic sanctuary of French football located in the 16th arrondissement of Paris, he was overwhelmed by a wave of emotions he had never felt before. This was the very stadium where great French footballers had played, where history was written. From the window of his new hotel room, where he was lodged for the first 2 weeks, he could see the city where he grew up. Paris seemed different, more mature, more understanding, more ready to accept him as he was. Luis Enrique, the new PSG head coach, appointed just a few months before Dembélé's arrival, met him paternally. "I know your story," the Spanish coach said. "I know what you went through in Barcelona. Here, you will get a chance to become who you truly can be." The first season, 2023-2024, at PSG for Dembélé, was a period of adaptation and re-evaluation. He played 24 matches, scored only 4 goals, and provided 2 assists, numbers that seemed worse than ever. This was not his form, this was pain. Ousmane again suffered a serious injury that kept him out for almost 3 months, but this time, he didn't break. Rima was by his side, Fatimata called from France daily. His team of specialists worked day and night, and by the end of the season, the situation began to improve. But truly revolutionary was the 2024-2025 season. Luis Enrique made a decision that many called brilliant: to move Dembélé from the winger position to center forward. Not as a classic striker, but as a false 9, a role in which the winger constantly drops into the midfield, creating chaos in the opponent's defensive formations. And next to him appeared 2 other forwards: the Ukrainian genius Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, who joined the club in January 2025, and the powerful Désiré Doué, forming an attacking triangle that was virtually unstoppable. The explosion happened in December. In 11 matches in December 2024, Dembélé scored 18 goals, almost 2 goals per match. His statistics for the entire season were phenomenal: 35 goals and 16 assists in 49 matches across all competitions. These were numbers that placed him among the greatest strikers in world football. In Ligue One, he became the top scorer with 27 goals. In the Champions League, he scored 12 goals, helping PSG reach the final. PSG's continental treble, the first Champions League in the club's history, the Ligue One Championship, the National Cup, was written by history, in which Dembélé was the main protagonist. The Champions League final against English Manchester City on the 23rd of May, 2025, it was his revenge for years of suffering, injuries, and criticism. When the final whistle blew and PSG won 1-0, Ousmane fell to his knees and tears streamed down his cheeks. Fatimata, sitting in the stands in a luxurious VIP box, also cried. Her son, the son from the poor neighborhood of Évreux, who became a European champion at the age of 27. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. When Ousmane Dembélé stepped onto the stage of the Théâtre du Châtelet in Paris on the 23rd of September, 2025, to receive the Ballon d'Or, the highest individual award in world football, he could barely breathe. Thousands of photographers, millions of people around the world watched as the boy from the poor neighborhood of Évreux, who once played video games at night instead of sleeping before matches, became the recipient of a trophy that only the greatest had received. Before him were Lamine Yamal, 2nd place, Vinicius Jr., 3rd place, and others. But the first name announced by the ceremony host was his name: Ousmane Dembélé, the 6th Frenchman in history to receive this award after Jean-Pierre Papin, Zinedine Zidane, Luis Figo, Franck Ribéry, and Karim Benzema. Fatimata, his mother, sat in the front row of the stands, next to Sambagou, his uncle, who had once seen a hidden diamond in the little boy from Évreux. When Ousmane delivered his acceptance speech, his voice trembled. He spoke of his mother, her sacrifices, her faith when no one else believed. He spoke of his father, who passed away many years ago but left a legacy in the form of a fighter's gene, a desire for betterment. He spoke of Rima, his wife, who saved him at his darkest moment. When the last sentence was uttered, Fatimata covered her face with her hands and cried, not from sorrow, but from the pain that comes when a dream becomes reality. Ousmane descended from the stage, and the first thing he did was go up to the stands and embrace his mother, because he knew that this award was not only his, but also hers, and of everyone who believed in him. But behind all the glitter and celebratory fireworks lay a deep and complex story of his contribution to the French national team. Ousmane's debut for the national team occurred in March 2016 against Luxembourg at the youth level, when he was only 18 years old. Since then, his path in the national team has been less brilliant than his club achievements, but no less significant. He participated in the 2018 World Cup in Russia, where the French were finalists. He was part of the team that won the Nations League in 2020. At Euro 2020, postponed to 2021, he was one of the main protagonists of the French attack. Over the years playing for the national team, Dembélé scored more than 20 goals in official matches, participated in more than 50 games for the national team, but always remained in the shadow of louder names, Kylian Mbappé, Antoine Griezmann, and later, Eden Hazard. But he never complained. Ousmane understood that his mission in the national team was not just to score goals, but to be a player who could create space, who could play in a team, who could be useful even when he was not in the spotlight. This maturity, this understanding of his place in the team, all of it grew in him during his sufferings in Barcelona. In his personal life, Dembélé remains an exceptionally modest and private person for the press. His marriage to Rima, the woman who saved his career and life, remains a private, peaceful zone, protected from the hustle and bustle of world football. Rima rarely appears in public, preferring to be discreet but always a present support. Their daughter, born in 2022, grew up in an environment where her father is one of the best footballers on the planet. But at home, he is simply a dad who reads bedtime stories and helps with homework. They plan more children, plan to build a dream home in Normandy, not far from the places of his childhood. After winning the Ballon d'Or, Ousmane began negotiations with PSG for a new contract. His current salary is 18 million euros per year, but given his status as a Ballon d'Or winner and his phenomenal contribution to PSG's triumph, he demands a significant raise. According to the French press, he is asking for 30 million euros per year, and PSG is willing to compromise, offering a contract with a sum of 25 to 35 million euros per year until 2030. This is a recognition that Ousmane Dembélé is not just a star. He has become one of the most valuable figures in world football. But Dembélé's main legacy is not in money, not in trophies, not in goals and assists. His legacy is in the story he embodies. A story that origin does not define destiny. A story that, even if you grew up in poverty, even if you suffered injuries that seemed incurable, even if you made mistakes in your youth that almost destroyed your career, all of this can be overcome if you have the right people around you, the right support, and, most importantly, the person's own decision to change. Ousmane Dembélé is proof that a second chance exists, that rebirth is possible, that strength of spirit can conquer any circumstances. Millions of children in poor neighborhoods around the world look at him and understand, if he could do it, I can too. And this perhaps is his most important achievement. Not the Ballon d'Or and not PSG's triumph, but the inspiration he gives to the next generation. His journey from the poverty of Évreux to the stage of the Théâtre du Châtelet, where he received football's highest award, is an epic story of how one man proved to the whole world that miracles truly exist if you believe in them strongly enough. When you look at the complete picture of Ousmane Dembélé's life, from his birth in the industrial town of Vernon on the 15th of May, 1997, until the moment on the 23rd of September, 2025, when he ascended the stage of the Théâtre du Châtelet in Paris with a golden trophy in his hands, it becomes clear that this man's life is not just a success story. It is an epic of transformation, of pain that becomes strength, of falls that lead to ascents. 28 years. That's how old Ousmane Dembélé was at the time of his greatest award. 28 years is a very young age in absolute terms, but in football, it is an age when a person should be at their peak form, at the height of their abilities, when accumulated experience meets physical freshness. And it was at this moment in his life that Dembélé achieved what he had never achieved before. He didn't just win the Ballon d'Or, he won it by a large margin over his competitors. According to the editor-in-chief of France Football, the victory was so convincing that there were no doubts. 3,345 votes from voters, journalists, coaches, team captains, and fans understood that in this season, Dembélé was the best. His final statistics in the 2024 and 2025 season are not just numbers. They are a work of art in transformation. 35 goals, 16 assists, more than 50 matches. This is not just scoring. It is changing the DNA of the team, changing its character, its soul. PSG with Dembélé in the center-forward position became a completely different club. From a team known for its financial power but lack of footballing beauty, they transformed into a machine that not only scored but also dominated tactically. It was a transformation of the system, not just the addition of a good player. But the main value of Dembélé's achievement is not in the award itself, but in what it symbolizes: overcoming. Let's remember what he was. In Barcelona, he was a problematic boy who was late for training, played video games instead of preparing, was one of the most fined players in the club's history. 784 days, recovering from injuries that seemed to be his curse. Media criticism, fan disappointment, doubts that such an expensive transfer would ever pay off. And suddenly, love, which became salvation. Fatherhood, which reborn him. A new life, new priorities, new discipline, and the next year, triumph. The story of Fatimata, Dembélé's mother, is a story worthy of a separate film. This woman from a Mauritanian village who never went to school, who could barely speak French, became the career manager of one of the best footballers in the world. She defended her son's interests against the Rennes management. She said no to clubs that were not ready to keep the family together. She was there when doubts cropped up, when disappointment weighed on shoulders, when it seemed that all was lost. And she lived to see the moment when her son stood on stage at the Théâtre du Châtelet and thanked her for everything she had done for him. This is maternal love in its purest form. What are Ousmane Dembélé's prospects for the coming years? In November 2025, he will enter into negotiations with PSG for a new contract. His current salary is 18 million euros per year, but given his status as a Ballon d'Or winner, he demands a significant increase. According to the French press, his demands amount to 35 million euros per year, although a compromise is expected to be found in the range of 25 to 30 million. PSG seems ready to incur such expenses. They understand that losing Dembélé in this case would be a disaster. But there are other scenarios for his future. Some Spanish newspapers are already talking about possible interest from Real Madrid or Barcelona. After his resurgence and victories at PSG, Spanish clubs might want to bring him back to the Iberian Peninsula, no longer as a young, untamed talent, but as an experienced, formed player who knows how to win. Real Madrid sees a potential replacement for Kylian Mbappé if his project doesn't work out as planned. Carlo Ancelotti would not be averse to having such a player. These are just speculations, but in football, anything is possible. Speaking of family, Dembélé plans to have more children. Together with Rima, he wants to build a dream home, but not somewhere in London or Madoya, but in Normandy, not far from the places where his childhood passed in poverty and suffering. This shows his deep connection to his roots, his understanding that money and fame are temporary things, while home, family, and memories are eternal values. He wants his children to grow up seeing the surroundings where their father was born, so they understand how grateful he is to fate for having received a second chance. His career for the French national team is far from over. Dembélé will likely be a key player for the national team, at least until the 2026 World Cup. France is undergoing a transitional period, and experienced players like Dembélé will be critically important in building a new team. After Mbappé, after Griezmann, after other legends, comes a generation of the new Dembélé, Eduardo Camavinga, young Jules Koundé. France is not afraid to change its generation, and Dembélé is one of the key links in this new cycle. But the most interesting question is, what is Ousmane Dembélé's legacy? It's not just the Ballon d'Or, not just the goals scored, not just the trophies won. His legacy is an inspiration. Millions of children around the world, especially in poor neighborhoods of Africa, the Middle East, in working-class areas of Europe, look at his story and understand. If he could do it, I can too. I can break free from poverty. I can overcome injuries. I can change myself. His story shows that second chances exist, that people can be reborn. In the 21st century, when everyone is used to stories of boys born into wealth and becoming stars, Dembélé's story reminds us that greatness can come from anywhere if a person is willing to fight for it. Ousmane Dembélé still has many years of playing career ahead. He is 28 years old. This is the peak for a forward. He can win several more Ballon d'Or. He can win even more trophies. He can become one of the greatest French footballers in history. But even if he retires tomorrow, his path is already written in the annals of football, as the story of a boy who was born in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong circumstances but never succumbed to fate. His life is proof that in football, as in life, there is no such thing as predestination. There is only choice, will, and of course people who believe in you in the darkest moments. Ousmane Dembélé believed, his mother believed, his wife believed, his team of specialists believed. And it was this belief that transformed the boy from Évreux into the winner of the Ballon d'Or, the main award in world football, a symbol of excellence and greatness.